face. I don't know what. There you go.
Stop it!
That's different.
Stop it!
That's how you get sprayed.
That's
buddy.
how you get
sprayed.
Hi, Triple Eight Gun Safety with your tip of the week. Pepper spray. Good, bad, it depends. Like most things in life, it depends. A quick disclaimer. This video is for informational purposes only. I strongly encourage you to check your local laws and regulations before carrying or using any of the tools described in this video. The number one self-defense tool is situational awareness. It helps you avoid potential issues. If you're situationally aware, you see a potential issue, you can avoid it. As simple as that. The next level is, at least if you cannot avoid it, it's not going to catch you by surprise. The last thing you want is for something to be taking place and all of a sudden you have that oh crap moment, and now might be a little too late to figure it out. And by being situationally aware, if the problem does come to you, at least you can be prepared to react to it in anticipation versus being caught totally flat-footed. When it comes to self-defense tools, the most effective self-defense tool is definitely a gun. So why would you choose pepper spray over a gun? Well, you may be in an area that's non-permissive, maybe regulations don't allow it, maybe you're traveling and they allow pepper spray but not firearms, or for whatever personal reason you may have not to have a gun. Now, my opinion, and it's just that, my opinion on pepper spray is based on two life experiences. A friend of mine's sister was about to be robbed, and she sprayed the guy. Guy pulls out a knife, stabs her to death. Obviously, she ends up dying, and always left a big question mark in terms of how effective is pepper spray. And the next one, well, take a look for yourself.
Are you ready? Guys gotta get in the face. He sprayed us in the face. I don't know what. There you go.
Stop it!
That's different.
Stop it!
That's how you get sprayed. That's buddy. how you
Stop
get
it!
sprayed.
On your knees! Get on your knees now! Hand behind your head!
And one of the things that you should take away from that video is that after a direct hit in the face, P.S. I had just come out of a CS gas tent, so I was already a little bit tenderized. I was still able to draw my weapon, engage a subject, give verbal commands, etc. So there may be people out there that have either been exposed to it or are under some sort of medication that just makes them indifferent to it, or they may just not care and it doesn't affect them. So know that about pepper spray. On the subject of pepper spray, that's the generic term. Some of them are made up of actual pepper extract. Capsaicin is a popular one. Other one may be CS gas. Again, that's not the purpose of this video. Do some research to see the different type of chemical agents that are used to make the spray. Some of them are blended. There's two primary kinds, pepper spray and pepper gel. I'll generally use pepper spray to refer to both of them. And the size of the container is not relative to the contents. This happens to be pepper gel, pepper spray. These are the ones that I have. This is a larger one, this is a smaller one, but that's not to say that you can't get spray in a bigger can and gel in a smaller container. So those are the two types. Why do I like pepper gel a little better than spray? Well, if you're in a breezy area, you can get a little splashback on the spray, less of a probability with the gel. If it's indoors, again, you have the spray effect that can maybe mist, while the gel is a little bit more concentrated. On the downside with the gel, you do have to be a little more accurate. It's a little bit more focused. So again, a lot of videos out there on one versus the other. Do your research. I think if you're carrying, it's important for you to get a sense of what it feels like. What's the effect? It could be something as simple as maybe putting a little bit underneath your eyeballs here on your cheeks, maybe a little bit on your nose, just so you understand the sensation and you don't freak out should it hit you in that one moment where you actually use it in self-defense and now you start losing your mind because you've never been exposed to it. Before you do that, let me ask you that you check with your doctor, make sure it's safe for you to do, and enough said on that topic. All right, so I gave you a pretty long preamble. So pepper spray, good, bad, it depends. Like I said at the beginning, it depends. As a standalone self-defense tool, I'm not very confident in its absolute ability, unless maybe if you're good with your hands, you have some sort of formal, whether it's boxing or martial arts experience, you're a good grappler. This can be an enhancer, especially when facing multiple attackers. But as a standalone tool, no. Now, as a complementary tool, I think it does have a place. If you opt to carry a firearm, it could be a good in-between or less than lethal option, depending on the circumstances. We're not going to get into a use of force matrix, but just know that in law enforcement, there's a use of force matrix where an officer can escalate depending on the sort of resistance, and that escalation includes things that are referred to as less than lethal, something like CS gas or pepper spray, all the way to lethal, which is a firearm. For the average person, and especially in this case, someone opting not to have a firearm, I think there's three broad categories of complementary tools: stun gun, some sort of impact weapon, and some sort of edged weapon, right? So fancy name for a knife. Now let me just jump to the conclusion and say that for the average person that's not ready to invest a lot of time and skills in martial arts, in baton training and knife fighting, etc., I think the stun gun offers the least amount of obstacles, right, to that person. Let's talk about stun guns first, because I think that's the most obvious, and then I'll lightly touch on the other two. All right, as you can see before me, I have several different stun guns, and obviously they differ in size, shape, and even color. I'll touch on this one last. So what do they have in common? Well, all four of them stun. They have a stun setting. Now, let's not confuse a stun gun with a taser. You may have seen law enforcement deploy, looks kind of like a yellow gun. They shoot it, out comes a couple of darts. There's these little wires or little string looking things connected to the wires. They connect to some sort of subject. They hit them with the zapper and it goes that way. That's not what this is. That's more of a distance tool. This is more of a close contact tool. This one, you're going to be holding it and it actually has to come in direct contact with the person you're using it on. Now, so they're all similar in that they do that function. They're also all similar in that they're at minimum dual function. And the second function is they work as a flashlight. So they have a flashlight capability. And then the third function, last ditch, they can be some sort of impact weapon. Although most of them are made out of plastic with metal contacts, that would be a last ditch effort. Now, as you can see, this one obviously looks, maybe even to the untrained eye, like a stun gun. Although this is my favorite one, especially for home and for vehicle. P.S. I'll have links to all these products in the show notes. But there's a number of different versions, a number of different brands. In particular, these first three are ViperTech, and these are mine. So these are the ones that either I'm using or family members are using. So these are ones that I've tested and I've used and we've played around with. So ViperTech, and this one is made by Saber, which coincidentally is the same brand that makes the pepper spray I use, even though there's other brand. So I'm a big Saber fan. You got the spray, the gel, and they also make these little stun guns. So why do I like this one? Number one, it's got good size to it. It's a pretty powerful one. And again, in the show notes, I'll put the actual strength. But in particular, the contact points are exaggerated. So to me, that implies that you don't have to be very precise when you make the contact. But in particular, I like the fact that it's got contacts on the sides. And why that is important is if somebody tries to grab it from you, now you can deploy the zapping or the stunning, or now you can zap them and they'll get shocked in their hand. So again, you get into a struggle, they grab it, now you zap them. Having said that, let me make a point that your pepper spray is going to be kind of a distant type of tool, right? Think about having a long sword and a short sword. So there's some sort of threat, you're trying to use it to keep it at distance, at bay, and disengage. The goal is always in a self-defense situation to break contact, disengage, get to safety, and survive. It's not to win, it's not to get a trophy or anything like that. It's to, again, create distance, get away from the threat. So that provides the that long sword approach. Let's say that doesn't work and the individual closes the distance. Now, at least if you do come in body to body contact, you've got something that helps you improve, or something that improves your odds. Now, understand this. There's no hierarchy here. There's no, well, I got to use that one first and this one. It's all circumstantial. And this goes back to the situational awareness. Somebody instantly closes the distance on you. It's not like you're going to try to get your pepper spray and see if you could fight them off. No, you go right to your close quarter tool, which I can't overemphasize how important it is to have that situational awareness where you're ready with your tool, not digging in your pockets or digging in your purse, trying to figure out like what is it that you're going to do. The other model, I particularly like this one, again, ViperTech, is of all of them, it has the strongest light, pretty effective light, but it's basically, it looks like a flashlight because it is a flashlight, but it is also a stun gun. In addition to it, it's got kind of raised surface here on the front end. So if you do use it as an impact weapon, it gives you a little bit more of a bite, although this is hard plastic, so I'm not sure what kind of impact. This is aluminum, the body's aluminum, so again, it could act as that. But my favorite part of this one in particular is it's a flashlight. You can be walking your dog with your flashlight and then use it as you see fit. All of these are rechargeable, by the way. These two in particular, and this one, have a separate charging cord. I brought this one out because it's kind of neat. It's self-contained. You actually have the charging plug right built in, so you just put it on your wall. It's rectangular shape. Doesn't really look like like a stun gun. No different than the other one. It has this light. Some of these, the light isn't as strong as the flashlight one, but it'll get the job done. But more importantly, it does have the probes, the contacts, and the ability to stun. And then last but not least is this little dude. This little dude is as powerful as I think this one. And again, the actual power rating will be in the show notes. What I like about this one in particular, and they come in different colors. This one happens to be pink, comes like in purple and black, etc. It's very, very small. This is an iWatch, just for comparison. And you can see it's not that large. It fits in a purse, fits in a pocket. Again, you're walking your dog. It gives you the ability to light up the way. And if you have to use it as a weapon or as a self-defense tool, you've got that option. This one in particular comes right off the shelf from Sabre with a matching pepper spray canister with pepper spray in it. So it's kind of nice because it already complements itself. So whether it's the black, again, let's not get caught up in the color, but now you have, I'm going to call it your long sword and your short sword. I'm right-handed. I always think about my left long sword being my left out front and then up close with my right, but that's personal choice. Also, with these smaller ones, just because you have the stun gun doesn't mean that you can't still strike and use whatever training you have available to yourself. So these are 4, but again, a lot of different models. Do your research, and out of the box. P.S. They're not very expensive. They're like $20, $15. So it's kind of a cheap self-defense tool that you can get. And I think this one has a package. I'm gonna say somewhere like $15, $20. You got pepper spray, you got your stun gun, you got a flashlight. I mean, you can't beat this deal. All right, let me lightly touch on impact weapons. Impact weapon, just as the name described, is something that you use to impact someone. Again, they're within the less than lethal space in law enforcement. However, that assumes training. Depending on how you use something like this, it can be a lethal weapon, right? If you're trained and you're going for the joints or you're going for a sternum spear, that may be less than lethal because you received certain training. If you start clubbing someone on the head and keep clubbing them, again, the intent, it could be considered a lethal weapon. So buyer beware. This in particular, 4D cell flashlight, very robust, very heavy, can have a wallop, but again, not really that practical for day-to-day carry. It's heavy. You have to know what you're doing, and for the most part, it's kind of a relic. Nice to have maybe in your house, if you need a good flashlight, if you want something that can serve double duty, but not super practical. I'm a big fan of the expandable batons. Probably one of the best brands out there is ASP. These are, and I didn't deploy it properly just because I want to be able to close it and show you, but this model in particular is 21 inches. What you can tell right away is from a compact size, it can extend, it can give you reach, but again, this is one of those tools that in trained hands is considered less than lethal, right? ASP offers training for law enforcement and you're trained to hit the joints. But in non-trained hands, it could be a problem. At the same time, with any of these impact weapons, with any of these as well, you can be overpowered, they can be taken from you. In my mind, if somebody takes something from me, I'd rather get tear gas or pepper spray or stun gun than have somebody beat me with one of these batons. If there was one that I personally like, and actually the one that I carry most of the time, this particular model, it's not 21 inches, it's the 16-inch model. It's an airweight. This one's made by ASP. Has a nice little pocket clip. Nice thing about this, very small, very compact. Even in running shorts, it doesn't cause it to sag, and it could serve as an in-between tool. If you have an aggressive dog that's coming towards you, you may not want to hit the dog with it, but once you extend it, you can use it to keep the dog away. In a dog's mind, this is an extension of you, creates a perimeter. If it's gonna bite anything, let it bite this and not me. But again, many uses. If you're in a vehicle and you need to break out a window, again, a good window breaking tool. But I return back to the initial premise. It does require training, and you need to know what you're doing and a certain level of technique proficiency. Also, when it comes to impact weapons, it doesn't have to be something that by design was an impact weapon. Something like a hammer, especially at home, is a pretty formidable impact weapon. You can use it, to strike and defend yourself. And this is what we call a weapon of opportunity, right? You happen to have it. It's not really designed for it, but it can serve a purpose, especially one that has a steel body, especially one like this. It can be used as a hammer and as a self-defense tool, although I don't recommend it as your primary self-defense tool, but just know that that's an option. All right, the third type of complementary tool or self-defense tool, and again, I'm going to be super brief with this because I really don't recommend it for the average person unless you do have some training, because going back to, if you don't have any training, it's going to be not only difficult to use, but if you're overpowered and they take it from you, now you've just given your attacker a deadly weapon, especially if someone that has done time, has been in prison. Most guys that have been to prison, carry shanks. So they're a little bit more skilled than the average person. Having said that, just know this. There's two basic designs. There's what's called a folding knife, which is like the traditional pocket knife, although there's some that are made for self-defense. This one in particular is a unique model. And you have fixed blade. And just as the name implies, it's a fixed blade. It's one piece of solid steel. From a self-defense perspective, typically the fixed blade is preferred, less failure points. In addition to, not only do you have a cutting edge, but you have a striking pommel, which can be used, again, to strike, to defend. Using a knife is not only not pretty in a self-defense situation, but again, it really escalates the risk to the user if you don't know what you're doing. And these are considered deadly weapons in terms of, and these are considered lethal weapons, although any of these can be lethal used in the wrong way. And knives are considered in most jurisdictions, especially certain types, lethal weapons. I can't overemphasize, especially with knives, for you to check your local laws. So if you got this far and you thought, well, but I still want to carry a knife, what I personally like are what are called like push knives or push daggers. This one in particular from Cold Steel. It's nice because it has a rubber T-handle. It's metal on the inside. This one doesn't require as much technical skill as, let's say, a regular knife. If you know how to punch, if you know how to claw, if you just know how to flail, there's going to be a lot of impact or a lot of damage that you can do with this knife. Now, I know that some self-defense experts say, well, put your keys between your fingers. Number one, put your keys between your fingers and hit something medium like a tree and tell me how your hand feels. On top of that, I don't know how much damage those keys are going to do. I know that this would make a significant damage in a self-defense situation, but again, you really need to know what you're doing. Here's another model, little different but similar concept. This is a K-bar TDI. You grab it this way, it's kind of got an L shape versus a straight shape. It allows the user, to punch, to rake, to use it in different ways. Even if you use a reverse grip, it was originally designed for law enforcement as a defensive firearm retention tool, but it has a lot of practical applications. Again, it's one piece, it's solid, and this one's not too expensive. But do I recommend it for the average person? The answer is no. Do I recommend the pocket knife? Yes, from a utility perspective. I think everybody should have a pocket knife. There's 1,000,001 things that you need to cut in the course of any day or any week, so it's nice to have a knife. From a self-defense perspective, if it's something that you want to get into, seek out professional training, martial arts training in your area, and understand the consequences. And again, I know I've said this several times, check your local laws. If you travel, there's some countries where you can't even carry a small pen knife. So it's on you to make sure that you understand the regulations and laws pertaining to any of these things. So at this point, it should not be a shocker, no pun intended, what I think would be the most useful combination. I believe the most useful combination for the average person that's not willing to invest, hundreds, if not thousands of hours in martial arts training and sophisticated training, is a nice combination of stun gun with your pepper gel or pepper spray, whichever one you choose to use. And again, given that the price point is pretty low for these products, I would say if you're going to have something that you carry with you on a day-to-day basis, you may want to consider one of the smaller packages. Again, because it could be the greatest tool in the world, but if it's too big, too bulky, and you're not going to carry it, it does you no good on the street. So have something light, something that you can carry easy, that you can find with no issue for your everyday carry. And then if you want to have something with a little bit more bite or more capacity to it in your vehicle or in your home, you could have a combination of this, or they actually make even larger canisters of the pepper spray and pepper gel. And then they have all different versions, even bigger versions than this, of the stun gun. Another thing, regardless of which brand you get, most companies sell an inert version of their pepper spray. I think it's usually filled with water, and it allows you to practice. You can practice on a piece of paper, practice in your backyard, shooting the spray and kind of seeing how the pattern works. And at least that gives you an idea of what will happen when you press the button. That's generally it. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Number one self-defense tool is situational awareness. If you're situationally aware, most times you could avoid the situation. When you're transitioning from especially familiar spot to familiar spot, from your front door to your vehicle, from your vehicle to your office or your place of work, to the C-store where you get your coffee in the morning. These are places where you're very comfortable and you're on autopilot. This is where you have to be extra vigilant. On top of that, when you're out on the street, when you're walking your dogs or just walking, number one, keep your head out of your phone. And for God's sakes, don't wear 2 earphones when you're doing, jogging or whatever. Always keep one ear free so you can hear a potential threat. A quick disclaimer. This video is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute training, nor is it a substitute for professional training. Any information linked to this video is at the viewer's and or the listener's own risk. The viewer and or the listener is advised to research and understand all laws pertaining to any of the tools discussed in this video.